Good afternoon. I'm Sylvia Oberly, a member of the planning team for Faith in the City, sponsored by Knollwood Baptist Church. Thank you for joining us today. Though we would love to gather in person, we decided that to make it more accessible to many of you, we would revert to our virtual format for the next few months. As health conditions become a little more stable and as we continue to figure a more workable streaming option. This also enables those across the state to continue to be part of our discussion, so we welcome you as well. As always, we will be recording our session today and make that available for you and others on our Faith in the City Facebook page, as well as on the Knollwood Baptist Church website. Both of those options will be posted in the chat. As you may know, Faith in the City is in its fourth year of exploring in-depth community issues that impact us all. We continue our focus on educational equity, not because it is the only community issue of note, but because it is one of the most significant and far-reaching. Today, we are pleased to have with us a panel of administrators and school leaders from the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System. Together, they will review for us the successes and challenges of last summer's sessions to address learning gaps and how this has informed and transformed classroom innovations this fall. Throughout the summer and earlier in the year, multiple programs from the school system and community partners engaged more than 7,500 students in special sessions, remote learning centers, 9 different Freedom School settings, and other offerings. What did we learn? What worked and what didn't? What difference are we seeing in the classroom now and in the months to come? And how can we, the community, support these efforts? In just a few minutes, our panel will address these questions and others. But first, a few words of housekeeping and introduction. We ask that you all mute your audio during the presentation so that we can hear. And please use the chat function to ask questions and share information along the way. We will be monitoring those questions for our Q&A session afterward, and make sure to pose them as we can. Our formal program will end at 1 o'clock to respect your time, but we will keep the call open for a few minutes for informal conversation and sharing. Just consider it kind of the parking lot discussions. We are so excited to have our guests with us today. They are Nicolette Grant, who has been the Chief Academic Officer for the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System since December of 2019. Before coming here, Ms. Grant held a variety of local and state leadership positions during her 28-year career in both Guilford County and Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Cheryl Wright began her career, she's a native of Winston-Salem, and she began her career with the system as an elementary school teacher in 1997, developing experience in extended day programs, summer programs, and year-round programs. Since 2009, she has overseen the district summer programs. Brad Oliver is starting his 30th year with the Winston-Salem system. During that time, he's been a band director and then a program manager in instructional services. For the past 9 years, he has served as the Director of Arts Education before moving into his current role as Executive Director of Encore Learning. And Diamond Cotton is currently principal of Kimberly Park Elementary School, a longstanding Freedom School site. With experience in multiple school settings, she was asked last year to restart Kimberly Park Elementary, and bringing her hands-on classroom and school experience, she says she is passionate about innovative ways to get students and parents engaged in learning. Again, after hearing from our panel, we will open for questions. So please use the chat function to pose them, and we will do our best to bring them to their attention. Again, thank you for joining us. And now I turn it over to Ms. Grant.
Thank you so much for welcoming us to this forum today. We are excited to share the work that we've done over the last summer to support our students, as well as our plans moving forward. I also want to recognize our superintendent, Ms. McManus, who is also on the call, for her leadership and her trust and faith in our team. So hopefully you can see the presentation. Our team and I will just go over some of the, has it come up yet? I see. Okay, now it has. All right. Perfect. So I want to give you some background information about kind of what led to the planning of our summer program for last summer. As many of you know, in March of 2020, our educational world was interrupted, and our teachers had to quickly shift from face-to-face instruction, which was how they learned how to, as students, and also how they learned to teach. And suddenly we were forced into this remote environment. Our first shift was to digital resources, digital instruction, but it wasn't face-to-face. It wasn't live instruction that we offered students. It was more of helping our teachers use digital resources to provide students with what we call asynchronous, or work that the kids are not doing directly with teachers. That was very difficult for our students. It was very difficult for our teachers. It was not successful in engaging students, and our students were losing instructional time, as well as being worried about what was happening in our country during the first, I guess, rise of the pandemic. Then in August of last school year through January, our students returned to school through different phases. We began the year in what was called Plan C, where they were fully remote. And our teachers learned, and we adjusted, and we're now able to provide live instruction for our students, but it was exactly like we're doing now through Zoom or through Teams. And so our challenge was balancing instructional time, knowing that we lost instruction from the previous year, with too much screen time for our students. And we were very worried, especially for our elementary students, being all day long looking on the camera for instruction.
Changes? No.
Oh, wait. Mr. Woody, your mic is on. So Plan C remote for our students, and our teachers were teaching synchronous or live instruction using Teams and Zoom. And as a district, we moved to Canvas, which was a learning management platform for our students. It was still difficult, but it was definitely better to have live instruction, although again, our balance with our screen time for students. We slowly started phasing students back into school, starting with our PreK and EC and some of our CTE programs. And then our challenge became what was hybrid instruction, or what we call concurrent instruction, where our teachers were teaching both the students who decided to return to face-to-face instruction with social distancing and mitigation strategies, and those that chose to remain at home. And that was a tremendous challenge for our teachers. Our teachers are amazing. They tried everything that we asked them to do. It was not easy for our teachers to do that. And the students that were at home were still missing that social interaction. And so Plan B was also a challenge, but it was an adjustment that we made to provide live instruction for students. We also began our first virtual academy as a district for families who chose for the entire year to remain virtual. Then we started planning from February through June of 2021, started planning our summer program. Knowing our students had experienced loss of instruction, we looked at data. Cheryl Wright, who's going to present to you in a few minutes, really looked at the data from how our students were performing at the middle of the year, and started making plans for our summer programs, with the goal of expanding our summer programs and being as inclusive as possible. Really focused on getting students back into face-to-face instruction, knowing that social, emotional interactions and relationships and connections were vital, and that instructional time of face-to-face instruction was vital as well. So we started our planning for our summer programs, and then over the summer, Ms. Wright and her team led our programs through site leaders for each site, and then analyzed the impact of that instruction. So our 5-week program was we had some requirements that the state provided as far as the amount of time students needed to be in school. And we offered a 5-week program, which is longer than we typically offer. We had about 25 sites across the district. And then we also offered a virtual option for students who did not want to come into face-to-face instruction. Our focus this past summer was on engaging students, developing positive relationships and social interactions. In addition to the reading and math that we've typically offered, we also included science. It was really important for students to have opportunities to have hands-on science learning and to utilize science vocabulary and interactions and collaborations with their peers. And we offered an expansive K-12 option. On our district website, Ms. Wright worked with our marketing and communications team to create a landing page and a site with all of our various programs, which were quite extensive this year, trying to offer something for everyone. which offered great benefits, but also great challenges with staffing and just managing so many programs. But we had our 21st century camps. We had high school bridge programs for students going into our English language arts, math, and science courses at the high school, continued credit recovery. Advanced learning was a new program we offered for our gifted students. We know typically our gifted students are not engaged in our RISE program, but we knew that our gifted students were also greatly impacted by the closures of our schools, and we wanted something to stimulate their thinking and learning and engagement. And so our advanced learning team offered a few camps for advanced learners. We had our traditional RISE, our virtual Jumpstart. We offered dual language immersion for our students who are in the dual language program so that they had the opportunity to interact using the language of Spanish and practicing their reading, writing, and listening, speaking skills in Spanish, as well as a world language summer boost. L services, our freedom programs, which Principal Diamond Cotton's going to speak on a little bit later. Continued our pathway to K-1, sponsored by Project Impact. Offered extended school year and future services to our exceptional children, and then offered a 1-week course through Seeds of Hope that used one of our sites. And so these are some of the different programs that Cheryl Wright managed, oversaw, coordinated. She was a magician, an absolute magician last summer. So I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Extended Learning, Cheryl Wright, who is the organizer, coordinator of these expansive programs and did an absolutely phenomenal job last summer and will again do a phenomenal job this summer. So Cheryl.
You. So I'm just going to jump in and share what you see before you is our attendance of many of our programs for which we provided this particular summer. There are a couple of them not captured, excuse me, a couple of our programs don't have a capture of attendance here, and we're still gathering and still collecting for some of our programs. Now, when you see this magic number of approximately 7,500 students that were served this summer, keep in mind that we started and we began with a much larger number of student need across our district. We pulled together our MOI data and end of year data to look at students and their success, fail or passing rates at the school level to determine approximately how many students needed service this summer. At some point, we had a nice number of almost 16,000 students across our district. And you can imagine us trying to find multiple programs to be able to serve. So you've heard it mentioned, but just keeping in mind that, yes, we realize that many of our students needed an academic opportunity, but we also realize that many of our students needed the social, emotional engagement, social interaction opportunities as well. And so many of those programs that you see before you on the right side and the various enrollment numbers or the attendance numbers was based on that. I'd like to also just add in that some of the programs where you may see, and I'll give the example, for instance, 21st Century and Freedom Schools, typically those programs only serve approximately 50 students. Slightly over if we're able to maintain, but those are usually our smaller programs that are serving 50 students per site, be it grant funded or community funded. So then we'll move to our next slide of, so this particular part of our presentation kind of leads into how we look at our programs and how we look at what we've done and what we're doing within our programs. So we had, again, multiple programs, and what I didn't share on that previous, and you saw all the different program listings is various programs use different assessment opportunities for students. So they have various assessments for students. With that being said, for this particular program, RISE, which was the program that had the most amount of student participation, we used our iReady pre and post for those students, as well as for our third grade students. They have a alternative reading assessment that is required by the state. So the state requires third grade students to not only participate in 72 hours of reading, but to also take an alternative assessment. And that's on top of our reading and math assessments that we provide through iReady. So literally what we've done through the RISE program, and again, the one that had the most of participation, because most of that is somewhat academic driven, goal specific What we do with that particular program is look at specific standards for which we typically see students struggling in during the course of the year. So we take those standards, and teachers, one, provide a pre-assessment, focus on the instruction in those areas, and then provide a post-assessment that follows through and follows on for those. And in most areas, you'll see that there were gains in, and then there are a few situations, I think it may be on the math side, where we saw some gaps. I bring this to you, you see this particular data, but I also want everyone to realize that when we talk about challenges within programming, sometimes it's difficult to do a pinpoint on what did summer service in itself do for a child's reading and math outcomes. Sometimes we're not able to pinpoint that it was just the summer service in itself that provided that pass or fail rate for a student, but the impact of a school year and what they're receiving for summer. And it's always a great benefit when sometimes our community provides the other external opportunities for students to engage as well. That adds in and feeds to our students' success. I always like to make sure that while we see our programs as academic driven on one side, that's not the sole purpose of providing summer learning opportunities for our students. So this was the reading slide, and then we'll move over to the math slide. And so here, again, looking at those standards for which we find students having the most difficulty in, and then focusing instruction on those particular standards, and then post-test, providing a post-test for our students in these areas as well. So we do see some gains in a few areas, and then we see some lapses in a few areas as well. Haven't been able to pinpoint what causes the lapse, for students where we see earlier on they have a pre. So for instance, I'm looking at, I think it's the applications percent. So it started out at 29.6%, and then it moves to 15.5%. Just haven't been able to do a pinpoint. It's almost difficult sometimes to figure out what really caused the decrease as opposed to an increase in from where kids moved from begin, unless they did some great guessing on the front end. Sometimes we wonder about that as well. So this is our, at the end of each of our summer programs, we do a survey. And so we walked away and added this slide for our parent perception, because we actually did some parental involvement as well this summer. But we walk away with our parent perception. But keep in mind that what you see here, I'd also like to add that we also did a student survey and a staff survey. And interestingly enough, our parents and our students were aligned in the amount, close percent in how many may have not been so comfortable in the thought of participating or their children participating initially on, but knowing that once their children did participate, the perception of how well did my kid do, or how well did I do as a participant in the program, and that I'm glad that I did have the opportunity to participate. I'm thankful for which we served in a district. I think early on said how many years that I've worked in summer program, but not all districts necessarily provide summer learning opportunities for their students. If we're not providing summer learning opportunities for our students, then where are our students? And then what other sources, what other resources, what other supports do they have during the summer? But it's good to hear that even with some of our challenges that we did have, that our families and our students were glad that they were able to participate, and would recommend to others that, yes, if this comes about again, we'll gladly participate again. So I wanted to share that. Not only was it just the parents' perception, but I may have to add that to another slide to let you know that our students also were excited about participation. One of the questions we threw in for the students: did you feel you were prepared, better prepared because you participated this summer in going into your first 9 weeks of school? And there was a high percentage of students that said yes. Because of the summer support that they had in place, they felt more equipped in going back to school, returning to school. So just wanted to add that piece in as well. And then we can move on to the next.
This is our summer enrichment slide. Summer enrichment's a very old program actually in our district. It's been going on over 50 years. It's actually a tuition-based program, but we were able to allow having a lot of scholarship opportunities through some additional funding this year. The program, many of you may have heard about our musical that we do every year, and we house that at Reynolds Auditorium. That's a picture from a couple years ago in Newsies. It was a great shot of some of the 3D sets that we did, and we did Matilda last year. But our program also, and that's a full-scale musical. The kids are involved in things like they would be in New York, as far as having coaches on voice coaching, full live pit orchestras. That's the goal of that program. Been going on for several years. But the program is sponsored by the arts department. So one would think it's just arts, and it is a lot of arts. But the program is K-12, and we offer things like the African drumming, guitar classes, piano classes, but also science and math as well. We offer robotics, aerospace. One class is called Mathtastics, is basically fun with math. So it's a very more broad-reaching program than just as arts, but arts is the core of the program. Their students are very hands-on. Everything is very hands-on. Creativity. When you walk into a classroom of summer enrichment, it's not going to be a quiet classroom. It's going to be a little noisy. Kids are going to be working and teaming up and all those things that you really want to see kids having a great time. So they're having a great time learning at the same time. And so, for instance, even the kindergarten and first graders, they get piano lessons every day. We have dance there. And so the shore excitement is probably our biggest selling point. The program normally has a waiting list after just a few first weeks of opening up in January. This year, the registration went a little bit slower. It was about March before we filled up, just because of the uncertainty of what we were going to be able to have in the summer. But we were fortunate enough to continue with this program and even expand it a little bit with the tuition help. And so that was greatly appreciated. And usually the third week of July is always the musical at Reynolds. And so kind of pencil that in on your calendar. That's one of the things that would be really fun to go watch.
So my name is Diamond Cotton. I'm the principal at Kimberly Park Elementary School, and I will talk to you a little bit just about our Freedom School here at Kimberly Park Elementary. Kimberly Park has had the longest Freedom School. We were the first to have one in our school district, and the program is here to promote the long-term successes of students by preventing that summer learning loss. And not only that, but making sure that we are igniting that passion for reading and inspiring a love of reading. Everything that we do here at Kimberly Park, even throughout the school year, revolves around reading. And this program allows us to provide the enrichment through this multicultural program. It's high quality academics, lots of character building. There's some family and parent engagement requirements for our families, and they do a great job of providing some parent sessions each week. We also have some civic engagement. We're always making sure that our students understand their responsibility in the community, and our children really have taken hold of that notion that they too can help in their community. The other is the leadership development, along with nutrition and health. We also have a high focus on mental health. And so you'll see through these next few pictures that not only are our children engaged, but they bring that information back, they share. A lot of times they are bringing back recipes, they're bringing back the things that they've learned into their communities, into their homes, and making sure that we continue, whether it's healthy living, whether it's us collecting food, whether it is just the responsibility of supporting the homeless. We did lots of things this year so that children understand their roles in their communities. Again, everything that we do is through literacy here at Kimberly Park. And we also have a heavy focus on having volunteers come. And so even down to our treat days, or what has been considered traditionally party days, we tie it to literacy. So for example, we have our fall engagement night coming up. We incorporate literacy that way. Our children choose a book, they're able to dress as their favorite character. And some of those same notions that we do in Freedom Schools, we're just bringing into the school year. This is actually one of our PE teacher and his son. And so they were reading a story to our Freedom School students. But tying literacy and making sure families understand how they can continue to support their children with literacy is what we do on a regular basis. You can even see on the next slide, again, that engagement of our students, it sucks them right into the learning. They love to do things and they don't even know that they're learning. And you can see that our volunteers are just instrumental, even in Freedom Schools, but we tie that right into the school year where we're training our volunteers as to how they can come and work with our children. We've set up lots of interactive areas in our building for this engagement. We teach our volunteers, how to respond to our children. And so the Freedom Schools expectations, the Freedom Schools, the meaning behind Freedom Schools is what we tie into our building every day. We also have Harambe. Harambe is a huge group session that we still continue throughout the school year. We do on Fridays, and we're able to recognize children. We're able to teach them about some concepts that we see happening in our community or even in our school. And so, again, just the impact of an overall well-balanced program is what's truly beneficial to our students.
So I'm going to kind of bring us into a conclusion somewhat of what has been shared previously, but then also just to add, a lot of what we're looking at is student outcome. Our student outcome, in particular this summer, and giving children more time and more opportunity to acquire new skills, material experiences. So it's the skills and the experiences that go along with, master those skills, experiences, gain, develop, and just strengthen. And a lot of what we were looking to see in those areas happened in many of those programs that you saw on the attendance page. But what you have in front of you is our kind of, we start, because we have so many programs, we kind of start broad. Did we reach our target number for students to participate in summer program? So we got about 35% of our target, because remember that target was more than that 7,500 that you saw, but we literally had, we started with a magic number of almost 16,000, and then at some point that number moved up to approximately 21,000 students across our district. And how we came up with that number was, again, based on there were certain courses, failing grades in certain courses. There was the middle of the year and end of year I-Ready in math and reading. And then there was students that fell in the group of retention, possible retention students. So we had all of those students within our programs or within our focus of who we were trying to get to attend various programs across the district. So we had, again, 35% of our target. Then we drill down because our RISE program, as mentioned earlier, one of those very first slides, we literally had a school extension plan that had to be provided. School extension, learning, recovery, and enrichment plan that had to be provided to the state. And RISE kind of fell in that specifically because of the goals of the program mandated by our state. So we drilled down and we looked specifically at the reading and the math outcomes. And overall, those two slides that were shared with you, we had positive outcomes in reading and math overall. And then when we look at third grade and third grade only, again, those are those students that are required to participate for 72 hours of reading instruction. We try to provide them with more opportunity as well, but they are required with that 72 hours and to take another assessment at the end of summer. We had a significant number of students to reach their proficiency of RTA by the end of the program. And how did our parents feel about the Rise Summer program? So we've shared, they were glad their children attended. We had a few struggles on the front end, transportation, just getting our communication. These are our externals and the things for which we work on, but they were glad that their children were able to participate, and they recommended future programming for families across our district.
So some of our next steps as we plan for our next summer program, we've already started our first meeting on next summer's planning, just setting up the vision of what experiences we want our students to have, which is social emotional engagement, social interaction, positive relationships, love of learning, and obviously focusing again on reading, math, and science. Those are areas that our students did struggle in during the pandemic and during our remote learning. We're reflecting on areas of improvement. Ms. Wright mentioned already transportation. If any of you have CDLs and are interested in bus driver positions, we are hiring, but looking for areas of improvement with transportation, with enhancements for children, with communication to our families, community partners. We also could benefit from any support you could provide around wraparound services for before school and after school, field trips, clubs, activities. Incentives and donations for incentives for our students. Also, if any of you have connections with book drives to provide books that we can give to our students and take home to create home libraries, and getting books that are represent diverse cultures, ideas, and themes. We will continue to utilize our assessment data. We've already done our beginning of the year data. Once we get our middle of the year data, we'll start our targeting for our students and recruiting high quality teachers for our summer programs. Again, communicating early and often with our families so that they can plan and be ready for our summer programs. And then our goal is to implement high quality, enriching, and engaging experiences for our students for next summer. So thank you for listening to our recap of last summer, our learnings, and our moving forward. I think at this time we had opportunities for some question and answers, and we'll turn that back to Sylvia to coordinate any question and answer time that we'll have.
Okay, thank you to all of you. Very good information. And we know that we've already started seeing some questions in the chat, and we know that you others may have questions. Dean Clifford's going to take over with this part. Dean, are you ready? I know that Paula McCoy has a question in the chat, and please raise your hands in the function in the participants and the chat, and we'll get your questions addressed. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the information.
That's right. We got a lot of information and a lot to absorb. I've been busy writing down lots of notes and thoughts. So Principal Cotton has already started addressing, but let me repeat what Paula's question was and let the principal respond verbally if she doesn't mind. Paula really wanted to know, given the emphasis in Freedom Schools on responsibility, are there opportunities even throughout the year for students to engage in some sort of volunteer way with community agencies? Is that happening yet, even for elementary students, or not?
Yes, we do. We do one a quarter right now, although we are picking up some other areas. For example, we now have student council, and so they've come to our leadership team wanting to do more. So for example, we try to tie it to the times that, it's just natural for our children. And even though some of our children may need school supplies and things like that, it's always heartwarming to see, a small token that children can give to others. So we have reached out to business partners, we reach out to community organizations, church groups, and our children are even able to help some others that have the need. So when it comes up to Thanksgiving time, second quarter time for us, we do collect food. We allow our children to deliver that food to our shelters. But not only those kind of volunteer opportunities, we also look at social issues as well. So when social issues are going on in the community, we grasp hold of those. We give our children the platform to be able to have discussions while we're there. We're able to answer questions. We're able to discuss things and help them through. Trauma is what we've noticed is very real with our children, and some of them don't have people to go to. So we try to provide those opportunities for our children. And it's in a controlled environment where we can help them through it. So it's not only about just the volunteer, but sometimes social issues or experiences that may be happening in our community.
Great, thank you. Before I go to perhaps the next question, I know we have at least one or two folks that were involved with other Freedom School locations. I think Russ may be on the call. I'm not sure about Carrie Woods, whether she's with us, but if you are, I wonder if you would be willing to speak up as to whether there were any contrast or differences between a community-based, agency-based Freedom School and what might be offered in the public schools. Any comments from you all? I'm not hearing.
Sure, I'm happy to share a little bit. This is Russ May. I have the privilege of directing the Sunnyside Freedom School, which is, as you mentioned, a community-based Freedom School location. We do prioritize our public school students, but they come from a variety of different schools versus one in particular. There's a lot of similarities. I think one of the unique opportunities of working in the community-based Freedom School has been to focus on a region, a location, a neighborhood, and to be able to bring in full families into Freedom School and to see that dynamic of impacting an entire household and an entire neighborhood with these learning opportunities and cultural approaches to culturally relevant approaches to our education. So we see a different kind of impact. It also allows us, a real intimate relationship with these families, to be in their homes during the summer and to meet with them in their home place versus having to do most of that work from the location of of the school facility or something. But that being said, I think mostly they're very similar, and our hope is that we'll see more kind of overlap here. We want the community and the school to remain in deep partnership with one another. We want the idea of something like a Freedom School as a resource to not have to be, we don't want all these resources to always be found just within a school facility, but to understand that the school facility and the staff there are in partnership with the community. And so we're hoping for more of that. And this question of civic responsibility, even that piece, trying to see how the relationship of the community with the Freedom School students can continue into the school year and not have this handoff where we're disconnected from the lives of the students and the scholars, as we call them. So yeah, there's some differences, and I've enjoyed the neighborhood approach for sure, but we're actually trying to build on the relationship between the community model and the one that's located in a traditional school facility as a summer program model.
Thank you, Russ. And it might be helpful for our audience if we just remind them, if they don't know, or introduce them if they don't know, to the fact that the Freedom Schools emerged from the Children's Defense Fund. And it's designed to be not only academically and socially enriching and so forth, but to be highly relevant culturally. And because one of the fields of research that, as we try to understand what the various inequities are that may make for some discrepancies in student achievement, we have to grapple with whether a school environment or a community environment or wherever students are, is it an environment that seems relevant to their particular culture, to their particular family's outlook and values and so forth, and how we can make sure that wherever kids are, they're feeling that sense that that my culture, myself, my family is important and is valuable and is relevant, and to put that in the context of the larger national environment as well, I guess I could say. So, so Freedom School has been a well-proven and well-researched model for additional experiences for kids that are culturally relevant as well as academically rich. Sylvia, you had a question, and I'm not sure if it was addressed just to the Freedom Schools or to all of the summer programs. What was their greatest challenge?
Right, right. And also how they're trying to overcome. I mean, the challenges you face this summer, you mentioned trying to address those coming up next year, but specifically increasing the number of students that you're reaching and getting more parents involved. How are you trying to address those challenges?
And maybe another way of expanding that a little bit is to say, if your target was 16,000, what were some of the challenges or obstacles that meant you had a hard time reaching more than 7,500? I mean, where were the difficulties there?
And Cheryl, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to you. I think one of the difficulties we had for both student participation and teacher participation for hiring was just fatigue. It was a really tough year. And there were teachers who were just exhausted from hybrid teaching. It was just a stressful year. And so many of our teachers wanted to take just a break, a well-deserved break over the summer. And some of our students were just exhausted as well and just wanted a break. But Cheryl, if there's other things that you saw in your recruitment, as far as whether it was timing or anything else, please feel free to add anything else.
I would say that was the greatest of. And then for us to manage and work through where we would have began as a district, our summer learning plan, but to have mandates and to try to have those mandates in place and to adhere to those mandates. And in some cases, sometimes the mandates would change. And so I think that will probably be our second, because while we would have provided a form of summer learning opportunities, we may not have provided based on the mandate that was put in place. And so I don't know if everyone is familiar, but that mandate was House Bill, I want to say 82 at this point. I should know it because it was my daily House Bill 84. Thank you, 84. But literally we were required to provide either 30 days of service or 150 hours for our students. And so how do you get that in with, when we go back to that number one of students and staff already exhausted in many ways, and then to have to fall on and have and provide this mandate as well?
I assume that's a balancing act every summer. I mean, it seems like it would have been particularly challenging last year because hybrid instruction had worn everybody out, kids and teachers and parents. But even in a normal year, when summer comes, many of us remember that sense for ourselves when we were students of, woohoo, I get to play all summer, you know. And so trying to overcome that sort of desire to just be a little freer must be a real challenge always. How about funding going forward? Is that going to be a challenge, or will you be able to continue using COVID funds next summer?
Yes, we have some of our ESSER funds that are reserved, our COVID ESSER funds reserved for summer for the next, I think it's 2 more summers that we have, 2 to 3 more summers. So we do have the funding. Again, our challenge will be getting enough bus drivers, getting enough teachers for the summer. We are already going to start some really exciting plans, and then also trying to streamline. We had so many programs that we want to streamline to make it a little bit more easily managed, including a one-stop application instead of multiple applications, as well as hiring someone to support Cheryl. Cheryl's a one-woman department, and so support for Ms. Wright to do the amazing job that she does.
It's already been mentioned, by the way, we try to make sure that faith in the city is not just words, but that we encourage you to get involved in any way that you can and to take some action steps. And I've heard a few things mentioned already. The need for donations of incentives for kids as they're participating, I assume, through the year as well as in summer. The need for books, new, maybe lightly used as well, but books that are in good shape that can be given to kids to build a home library. We've certainly heard the need for additional bus drivers. So if somebody wants to take on a really brave mantle and become a bus driver either all year or in the summertime, that would be helpful. let's see, I'm wondering I think most of the Freedom Schools and maybe some of the other locations as well really hope to have volunteers that would come in and read to kids and help with hands-on experiences. And I think you mentioned field trips. Now, Cheryl, would you be the point person if somebody wants to volunteer, whether it's through the year or in a summer program?
Actually, there's a process, and I thought Miss Jenny was online. Oh gosh, Miss Jenny, she may not be out there. There is a process. So, oh, hey, see, oh, thank you, Miss Jenny. Can you?
What you need, Miss Cheryl?
You
What you
want to?
need?
How about putting in the chat any kind of contact information if people want to volunteer in the programs? And if they want to donate supplies, would they do it through you? Or we also had a very successful drive to collect supplies that people dropped off at Knollwood. Which would be better for you all?
Well, I'll put my email address in the comments. And if you just would like to reach out to us in the community engagement department, we can specifically connect you with the school and some of our partners to be a little bit more aligned in giving.
Yes,
I would
please.
suggest that Russ, any of the rest of you that are running Freedom School programs, you might want to put, if you're looking for volunteers, put your information in the chat too. And we'll get the information out to everybody.
There's also a question about partnering with local colleges and universities. Denise Johnson from Winston-Salem State poses that question. Are you interested or have any plans in partnering with local colleges and universities to help offer additional summer learning opportunities that can be mutually beneficial?
Yes. I hope I'm being heard. So yes, the answer is yes to that. And not only our university and colleges in the area, but we're also looking at another funding source that will tie us into external partnerships with businesses, trying to develop career development for some of our students. So we're prayerful that we will get that funding source and open our students up so that they see again beyond our school walls. I wanted to go back because when Ms. Grant mentioned we do have summer funding, and there was a list, there were a couple of things that were kind of put out there. When I talk about things such as wraparound services, that helps us not only connect to our partnership with who we are as a community and who we are as our schools within our community, but sometimes one of our biggest needs for our kids and our families during the summer, just like during the school years, those wraparound services. And we don't always have that great job of doing the wraparound services in the summer as we do during the school year. But when we're bringing our babes into our school buildings in the summer, sometimes parents still need that before and after care. And finding different ways to kind of help support families through paying or finding those good resources, reasonable, I would say, when it comes to amounts of money, resources for them is another thing to kind of add to that list.
And then also to add, Cheryl, our camp is Monday through Thursday. So in addition to the before school and after school, either offering programs or offering scholarship funding for families to participate, our Fridays, we typically do not have summer school. So if there are community partners who have field trip opportunities or day programs on Friday to watch kids, that would be another support. And or if we have any community members that are bilingual, we're always looking for bilingual staff to help us in the office or volunteer with interpretation or any of our programs as well.
Good.
This may be an appropriate time to broaden the conversation just a little bit too about the teacher shortages that exist both locally and statewide and nationally. And so as a person interested in education, please do whatever you can to encourage those that are entering college to consider teaching as a career, because we're really facing a significant shortage in terms of both teachers and support personnel. Another field of advocacy that perhaps school system cannot advocate themselves, but we can, is to say to our legislators, it is high time to fund what's being recommended in the Leandro case. Our school system will benefit with millions of dollars if the legislature does respond to Leandro, and it's an 8-year plan of gradually increasing funding in the budget for education. And if you aren't aware that we are 46th in the nation in terms of per student expenditure for education annually as a state, this should make us all feel a certain amount of chagrin, shame, embarrassment, whatever the right word is, because our kids deserve for us to be up near the top, not near the bottom. So think about, that's another piece of advocacy. Keep up your work. Let our legislators know that we're tired of their talk without matched by dollars.
And we'll end with a little bit more information about an upcoming event related to Leandro, but also there's one more question in the chat about any conversation about engaging the AmeriCorps Vista or state programs to assist with any of the initiatives. Are there partnerships developing there?
I am not aware of any. I know we've worked with NC Ed Corps to support us. But we can look into it. So if there's any information you want to provide us to see if there's another opportunity out there, we can look into it.
Okay, I believe Cedric Parker with United Way raised that question. So perhaps there could be some connection there.
Also, I'd like to be sure everybody knows that Spence O'Neill is going to capture everything that was raised in terms of contact information in the chat, and we can send those back out to you as long as you're in our email list. So we'll send out a summary of that later. Okay, we want you to know also that in November, we're going to pivot again to a topic that we addressed in one way a couple of years ago. This is to look again at how we start educational equity in the early years. We want to look at pre-K and the need for high quality as well as expanded accessibility. But we're doing that by having voices that give us different perspectives. So for example, Mark Owens from the Chamber of Commerce will give us a video clip explaining why business cares about those early years, particularly getting kids a head start in pre-K and what that needs to look like. We'll hear from Shay Woodbury, the chair of the school board, talking about why it matters from an educational perspective to be sure that we make pre-K that is high quality available to every child. We'll hear from a health provider, from Dr. Kathy Paling, who is with Bowman Gray Wake Forest School of Medicine and is a pediatrician herself, about the long-term health benefits of early education. And we'll be hearing from one of the program people at Latino Community Services, and that will be Mercedes Fajardo, who has been certified in 2 different countries for pre-K education. So we've got a rich panel, and then we'll close with a summary by Leslie Molnix about where pre-K priority is at this point. Again, we'll have to start by recognizing that we're behind some of our surrounding counties in the number of children that are served in pre-K, and we're handicapped by the lower reimbursement rate for early childhood services in our county. Okay, Sylvia, I think we were going to hear something about a state program too.
Right.
Yes.
We have a few minutes remaining, and Suzanne Miller is on the call with us. She is the head of Pastors for NC Children and also a member of the Every Child NC Coalition, which you heard about last month when Chris Nordstrom talked about Leandro. So Suzanne, a minute or two to tell us about some upcoming statewide meetings.
Absolutely. I'm so thankful that Chris spoke last month, so I don't have to try to imitate his wonderful conversation. You all know about Leandro. You've been hearing about it, which is wonderful. As you, I think, heard last month, or I don't know if, I think it actually happened right before it. On September 8th, the judge said, I need the final plan for how the state is going to fund the Leandro plan, how they're going to implement it. The due date for that, the next court hearing, is October 18th. That is a Monday coming up in 2 weeks. And so we are waiting to see what's going to happen. The legislature has said they will not, they're not plaintiffs, they're not involved in the case. The courts have said, yes, you are, because you control the purse strings for the state and you are a part of this, you're part of the people of the state. So what we're facing is a constitutional crisis in North Carolina. We're facing this is a big deal. It's not just for education, but for the state. When one branch of the government says the other branch doesn't have power or authority as checks and balances, that's a big problem. So on that day of the 18th, we're expecting the state to not provide the funding and the implementation of the first couple years of the plan. It'd be awesome if that happens in the budget process that's going on right now, but my hopes are not real high for it. So what we're expecting is that likely Judge Lee will hold the legislature in contempt of court. There's precedent for that in other states. There's also precedent for fining the legislature. So that's happened in Washington state. They fined them, I think it was $100,000 a day. It took them about 60 days for them to give in and finally fund it there. That money went into a fund to pay for education as well. So we're waiting to see what happens. As part of that, Pastors for North Carolina Children is hosting a prayer vigil on that Monday, the 18th at 10 a.m. It's in Raleigh downtown. I realize that's a bit of a haul for you all, but we would love to have folks from Forsyth County, from surrounding areas, come join us for that. We're going to be praying and lamenting the 27 years that it has taken for Leandro to work its way through the courts. That's 27 years of lost opportunities for our children across the state. That's not okay. And so we're going to be lamenting that. We're also going to be calling forth in the prophetic tradition, calling forth the legislature to act on behalf of the children. And so we'll be calling for them to fully implement it. So it's going to be an ecumenical interfaith gathering. We're having clergy from from different denominations, not just myself as a Moravian, but Baptist and Episcopal and AME and all kinds of different churches joining in. We're also going to have an imam and a rabbi and Baha'i and hopefully a Hindu, a couple of different prayer groups, prayer communities will join us as well. So we really would love for you all to have a car full of folks come down from Forsyth County and join us. It'll also be live on our Facebook page. So if you follow us at Facebook/Pastors for NC Kids, you can join in and watch live that day, but we really would love to have you in person if it's possible. I put a link in the chat there. There's a page on our website that has all the details. It has a map, where to park, all of that information, and I'll be continuing to update that page as the speaker list comes together and it gets finalized. I see David said the North Carolina Conference of the Methodist Church, UMAPS, United Methodist Advocates for Children, Congregations for Children, will be joining us. The North Carolina Council of Churches is joining us. I'm working with the Poor People's Campaign and the NAACP to hopefully be joining us as well. So we really hope you can come.
Good.
What
Thank you
time,
so much.
Sam?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. on October the
We're
18th.
hearing to be at 11. We're waiting on that, but we expect it to be at 11. So we're trying to do it right beforehand, which I realize is not always a convenient time for Winston-Salem folks, but
Well, thank you for letting us know. And there's information about how to learn more information about that in the chat, as
Yes.
well as we will be posting information about other events related to this. So thank you very much, Suzanne.
Week
And-
countdown of compliance, week of action coming. So I'll make sure that Sylvia gets all of those links. You all can join in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We
Let me
appreciate
remind everybody one more thing. If you're advocating at all, this is the prime time for the legislature to respond, because we have not only excess funds, a huge surplus in our state coffers, but we also have COVID money. So just keep that in mind if you're advocating.
Yes, and the budget was due June 30th, and we still haven't seen it yet out of conference committee. So this is the time to be calling for it. You're absolutely right. And we don't need to raise taxes for this. We have the money sitting in the bank to do what we need to do.
Well, obviously, this is a key statewide issue, and it's one that impacts our local system as well. So thank you for bringing that information to us. Please join me as we conclude here in thanking our panel of remarkable school system administrators. We appreciate all that you're doing. Clearly, this summer was a busy time, a time of learning, a time of reimagining how students could be supported. So we appreciate all the information that's been provided in the chat. And thank you very much for being here today. All of you, we had more than 65 participants to hear the presentation. So all 4 of you, keep up your good work and let us know how we can support you. Please join us next month for Faith in the City on November the 2nd, and also be on the lookout for a recording of this presentation to share with others. Thank you very much. We're going to stop the official recording now, but leave the call open if those of you want to stay and talk among yourselves or ask any more questions. Thank you again for being here today.